Welcome back to Final Sector, everyone. We are debriefing the Hungarian Grand Prix. Before we get into that, really quickly, it's coming up super quickly, the mid-season break podcast. It's going to be happening after Spa, so you've only got a couple of weeks left to get any topics or any questions you have in. Let us know. We're going to be doing a real long-form podcast, just covering all the news that's happened and the season thus far. So please leave your comments. But yeah, Hungary, Kyle famously said you were hungry for Hungary. So, were you left satiated or were you left longing for a more substantial meal?
Well, I realised that this year we were missing something that's been very important to the Hungarian Grand Prix for years, and that is that traditionally it has been called the Magyar Negyedij Grand Prix, but instead they decided to drop that. So obviously it dropped all the fun that we normally have here. And by
That's
that,
a shame.
I mean it was still fine, but maybe that was why we didn't have maybe as explosive a race as we thought we would. But irrespective, it wasn't boring. We were still shocked by, I think, certain drivers that did well, did poorly, so there's still plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I took away from it. It was like the race itself was fine. Like it was okay. It was serviceable. I didn't want to fall asleep before the end like I have past seasons. So that was good, but like still looking into the race, there's still lots of things to talk about, I feel like. I'm going to start with probably the most important one. Perez made it into Q3. Hey, let's give a round of applause. He's made...
He didn't make it much further, but yes.
Yeah, he only got P9.
I guess.
But,
with the new format, which did trip some others out. So, fair enough to those that made it through on that new format.
Yeah. But, Perez, he made it into Q3. So, obviously, first of all, that's great for him. It was only P9, but it meant he got a podium by the end of the race. So, I guess it's progress. Yeah.
Yes. Let's go with that.
Sure. Let's be honest though. The bigger story is that there's a couple of big stories, but I still think it's that McLaren were fast again. I think that was my biggest takeaway. We could talk about the Hamilton pole, but Max still ran away with it in the race by 30 seconds and was very much not... we could talk about that briefly, but I personally, I think that the fact that the McLarens were still fast here kind of cements them as a genuine threat to maybe Red Bull later in the season, but definitely Mercedes.
At least to P2 and the constructors.
Definitely,
It's a bit of a weird, wild ride, you know? Like, we were starting the year, we're going, right, it's going to be Aston Martin. Obviously, Mercedes, Ferrari are struggling. And then kind of Ferrari was up there for a bit, but then they fell back. And then Mercedes was up there. Yeah. And now McLaren, you know, they were strong last weekend, but we said, and everyone else said, McLaren said, look, we're going to Hungary. It's a different track. If it's hot, especially, they apparently don't normally like the heat. And yet they came alive. That you know, both drivers were very strong. One, I guess, stronger than the other, but still to the credit to Piastri, I don't think you can fault him. There was a caveat to say I think he did get some minor damage partway through that the team said did actually amount to a lot of time loss. So even if you look at the fact that, okay, he didn't finish P3, which may have been, you know, the best that car could have gotten behind Lando, no one is saying he did a bad job as well. So both shows that the drivers, obviously, it wasn't just a fluke last weekend, and the car at a completely different track that shouldn't have worked for them, that should have worked for other cars that weren't up there, that we'd seen in the past, in the heat. It's like, well, we're going into our predictions for this week, and we said, wow, it was just the once-off. And now you're looking ahead to, like, Spa, it's like, what do you mean? I had enough time already, and now it's like, I'm just going to put the Williams up there now. It could be anyone, who knows?
I don't know anymore, It does seem crazy to me that McLaren have made such huge gains so quickly. They did. I did read an article that they are still predicting that they're gonna be slow through the really low speed things. They made mention, which I guess is a fair point, that Hungary, you know, it's known for having a lot of low speed corners, but it also has a lot of medium speed corners.
It's low mid, yeah.
Yes, and they're finding that their car is still very strong through the medium speed and the high speed stuff, which is great.
Yeah.
But they're saying that even through the low speed stuff, both drivers are like, the car doesn't feel much different. It does go through there a little better, but it still feels really awkward through the low speed. And the fact that the track was so hot and got rubbered in, quite well and quite quickly, probably masked the fact that their traction, you can generally get better traction once the track's rubbered in and it's a little bit warmer and your tires up to temperature a lot quicker. It kind of masks the fact that maybe they weren't struggling quite as much through that low speed stuff as maybe they initially expected. Which again, Spa could throw up some questions there, because there's that final chicane before. We can go into Spa later, but that final chicane and then the first hairpin, they're talking about how there's a lot of time to be gained there, particularly that hairpin, because it leads onto the big straight.
For sure.
And if it is a little bit cooler there, which I would say it probably will be, then maybe you'll see McLaren possibly not. That's possibly where you'll see them struggle, but we thought we'd struggle this weekend. When we say
struggle, at this point their struggle is saying, well, whether they're going to be definitive P2. Because at this case, look, I mean, they had P2 with Checo chasing, but realistically, Checo should have got him anyway. So taking them out of the equation, Hamilton was, on fire, but you'd say Hamilton through the weekend, as we predicted, was doing very well. So he threw everything at it with a car, It's hard to tell sometimes on what you think of that Mercedes, because Hamilton might be like, "Oh, we're struggling, we're really struggling," but that's because it's because in the context of he sees the context as a McLaren going faster than him. He's thinking, well, obviously this feels poor, right? Yeah. But if the McLarens weren't there and he got the pole, he then got home an easy P2, or he was gaining on Checo at the end. He could have even still gotten a P2, right?
Yeah.
He probably would have been going, "Oh, this is great. This is great. We're making good steps." Yeah. So, and Russell made he stuffed up quali, but he had a pretty good race on a track that's hard to overtake as well, with some pretty fast cars out there. So, I think Mercedes was fine. But even if we see that McLaren fall back a bit, it's almost just like, well, that fight for P3 is going to be even closer than it has been this weekend and last weekend. So
definitely,
There's plenty of other things as well. I mean, do you want to touch on a few things from qualifying, I guess, before we go forward?
Probably should, yeah.
Little elements there, as we say. I guess Lewis doing very well there. As much as Max was saying, look, the car felt trash, crap, whatever. He still got beaten on merit, right? Which, full plaudits to Mercedes and to Hamilton, especially when Russell's out there struggling. When, I guess on the topic of Russell, that traffic, as we predicted with those tires, you said it in our preview, right?
Yep.
Definitely became a factor, and especially Russell, you saw the start of his lap was just stuffed, right? It happens now and then. It's just someone's going to get unlucky, and it was him. But look, if we're just looking at qualifying, hey, that Alfa Romeo, which I thought might be a bit better here, they were looking good, right? They surely converted that well, right?
Yeah, that was one of the other points I had. They qualified P5, P7, which is by far their best qualifying, at least as Alfa Romeo, at least from what I can remember. I can't remember them qualifying higher than that, and I'd be surprised if they did.
Not in a while.
Yeah, so you'd be like, okay, that's at the very least one of them is on for a good points finish, probably both of them, and then they finished P12, P16. So why was that? That's interesting. Well, Joe did a big fucky wucky and he started 2 seconds later than everyone else.
Well, so he
like anti-stall.
Apparently,
or something.
It wasn't an anti-stall. That apparently there's like a different launch mode that the car can sometimes think it should be in. It's like a backup. With some of the things he was tweaking on the grid, which was still he didn't do anything wrong, I'd say. But I think the car with some brake setting thought that it wasn't appropriate for it to start in a race start.
Gotcha.
So instead it changed to just a pull away mode. So that's why it pulled away kind of slowly in a non-race mode. And that's why he bogged down. And of course the driver that was behind him when he bogged down was his teammates. Immediately his teammate behind him had to veer out the way and lost a few positions. Then on the way to turn 1, apparently Zhao was on the radio going, I don't know what happened, can you check? Obviously not paying attention to going into T1. It's not like he can wait to say to say what's going on.
Yeah.
And then decides, hey, what Bottas did, a while ago looked fun. I'm going to do it as well and do some bowling.
It is, yeah. It's very much reminiscent of Hungary 2021 when it had pretty much the same thing happened. And I guess that obviously kind of ruined both those Alpha races, but it very much ruined both Alpine's races. More so. It's their second double DNF in a row after they both went out in the British Grand Prix as well. So this one, obviously, that you can't fault either of them.
It shows how F1 can bite, right? They have one weekend where they're both out through, you'd say, the team's fault. This weekend, look, they were both aggressive into there. I think it was either Ocon or Gasly that actually made a really good start. It was passing a few drivers, like on the grass, I think even.
Was it Gasly?
I think it was Gasly.
Yeah.
Because then Ocon was behind him in the middle of the track. There was a bit of a pinch, but it looked like it would be okay. And then Zhao outbraked himself. Relatively light touch. Apparently for Ocon, it like broke his seat or something.
Yeah.
Which they said was a pretty significant impact.
Yeah.
But they brought both cars back and they realized this is just gonzo.
Gasly's car had like a big side, like the big hole in the sidewall.
Crunch from the wheel crashing in. So
yeah, not great. So not good for Alpine. That's I mean, I was actually curious to see where their pace was because they've been sort of one of those in-between teams, kind of like, I guess, Ferrari and Aston, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But it's just like,
and even in their quali, they were okay, and we thought maybe they're setting up for the race, right? They didn't make the top 10 when other teams, as we say, like the Alpha did, right?
Yeah.
So, but then when we didn't get to see it anyway, so not that we want to look ahead, but I guess another team that we'll be looking for to prove something that they've still got the bit between their teeth before next weekend.
Yes, that's it. So, but yeah, I mean, out of turn one was, pretty much most of the action happened kind of turn one.
Yeah.
Piastri got an absolutely mega start. Hamilton kind of got mugged from P1, went down to P4. It was actually very reminiscent of what happened in either the F3 or the F2 sprint race. Something very similar happened where P1 I think dropped down to P3 or P4 and just got mugged at the start.
They did say that side of the grid that P13 was on was really bad to start from.
Yes, it wasn't great. But yeah, Piastri obviously got a mega start going into P2. Norris up into P3. Max obviously flew away out ahead. It's probably for
Piastri did give him a bit of a run for his money. Yes. I mean, he gave it a shot to his credit, right? But yeah, Max was going to have it covered anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And we've seen it before as well. It's like the first 2 or 3 laps, 4 5 laps of a stint. You'll see P2, P3, P4 is like, oh, they're keeping up with Max, and then Max just flies away. It's like it just takes a little longer for the Red Bull, I think, to. It doesn't really show, but I think it takes a little longer for that Red Bull to fire up the tires than maybe other teams do. But it doesn't matter because they're so much faster that once they do fire up the tires, it's like, okay, bye. They just run away with it. So
yeah, and it could well be part of their strategy to get those tires to last, right? They have a car that kind of turns it on slower because that's when we see, everyone's boxing and Max is still out there running,
going and doing personal bests.
Quick,
yeah.
Or that's why they can do the kind of one stop when everyone else can't. So
yeah, definitely. But yeah, obviously Hamilton, I said, dropped back to P4, so for him it was sort of a bit of a recovery. I did want to mention a little bit on Mercedes. Like you mentioned Russell obviously going up to P6 from P18. That the last stint of that Mercedes, I don't know if it was just because I don't think it was. I was going to say I don't know if it was just because the McLarens have struggled with tire degradation. So it could have just been a little bit of that, but those Mercs were very, very quick in that final stint. Like they were like the fastest cars on track.
Yeah.
And it was like Hamilton really, really put his foot down and could have very easily gotten,
Checo. He was gaining on him as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's very, very interesting how one team can seem so fast in like 10 laps and then on the same set of tires in the same strategy, like nothing's changed. And it's like, oh, okay, they're just like a second faster a lap now. It just goes to show just how close these teams are and where their different strengths are.
Yes.
which is probably why it's so hard to predict where each team is going to be and where, like, how even McLaren are like, we don't know if we're going to be fast here, or, you know, when we talk about how Mercedes for the longest time didn't know why they were quick, it's like, I kind of get it now because, like, who knows? But yeah, I think it's definitely going to be, at least for the time being, I think Mercedes and McLaren are the second and third fastest teams. It'll be interesting to see them fight, hopefully through Spa and through the rest of the season. We did touch on it very briefly, but I want to talk about Ferrari and Aston, and kind of particularly Aston, where
yes, I was going to say it's a good lead into Aston.
Yes.
And I did get some little reporting tidbits on this as well.
Okay.
You know, they had qualifying, they did okay, not great, but the team seemed to incite to say, well, no, we still think we're okay, we'll see how tomorrow goes, inferring that maybe they knew, you know, we'll scrap quality a bit to set up a really nice race car.
Yeah.
But the car didn't really go anywhere. They kind of just did their own thing. Drivers didn't really report any issues, so the car was running fine. It's just that the overall pace at a place that us and everyone else expected, you know, for them to
excel,
be fighting for that P2 at, just, you know, weren't even near them. Even for teams like Ferrari that was, you know, that were mucking around a bit, with their cars, and even Russell, who started back, they still, you know, were only able to pick up the scraps, really. Again, they were the team that was kind of ahead of Albon. If we want to kind of say who's going to be the top team ahead of Albon this week, is the metric we use.
It was him. It was them.
So it makes you say, well, you know, I was just going to finish my other point to say that then the team after the race were almost just saying, oh, we need to rethink this a bit. It's a bit of a wake-up call. I think Ed Straw from the race, I think he asked their racing director, on-track director, someone fairly high up, to say, you know, do you need to reconsider where you're at? They said, no, we're okay. And then he re-asked that question. He said that comment from yesterday, do you need to rethink it? And they were like, yeah, we do. This was a bit of like a wake-up call. I think they expected to go, let's sacrifice quality for the race. And then the race improvement, everyone else did better over that quality than the race. And Aston, you know, arguably went backwards in their pace. So it's like, oh, if they aimed for the race and others didn't, but they've fallen back more, it's a little worrying. So it's not exactly, you know, curtains. You could say, you know, they started very strong. You know, they've brought a few upgrades. This is obviously a case to say, well, was it just a fluke, you know, or actually, what, you know, it's a good test for them to see, can they get back in there? Because realistically, we'd still think they might be able to take, you know, P2, P3 in the constructors, but if they keep this up, it could be P4. They could be fighting Ferrari for P5, right? Who knows? So it's it's a season. It's, you know, at least there's a lot going on behind Max. That's the thing. I'm glad that there's just this commotion. It's you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, Aston's already lost that P2 to Mercedes. Mercedes is starting to not run away with it, but they're like 40 plus points ahead now at this point. It's like,
because compared to Aston, they are gaining, but then and Ferrari, but then McLaren are going to be suddenly surging up as well. So
McLaren are fifth in the championship, and you look at how many points they have, and it's like they go based just on, because, you know, we have, you know, recent memory brain, you know, we can only think about the last two races, and everything before that doesn't matter. It's like, you look at the fact that they're P5 in the stage, like, that doesn't make sense. I don't understand that. Why are they P5? Why they have, like, next to no points. They're, like, fighting with Alpine. It's like, but Alpine is shit compared to McLaren. Like, what?
And then you realize, because until Austria, they were getting a point if they were lucky.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Their car was not good. Which is, it just, again, credit to McLaren for sticking with it, and, you know, really working at this, you know, this big upgrade package is obviously paid off a huge amount, and it's, you know, I don't know if it was planned to sort of wait and bring it all in one go after a lot of, you know, wind tunnel testing, or McLaren have a wind tunnel. I don't know if they do yet.
If they don't, they'd borrow one. But irrespective, they still, you know, at the start of the year, they were saying we're going to be late on a few things. It could just be as well that because they were already starting behind. Maybe they, you know, they did combine it together, but it's still nice to have some vindication for Piastri, I guess, up to this point was saying, oh, has it been a good move? And now, well,
yeah,
2 Alpines DNF back-to-back, and he's up there fighting for a podium. You can't do much worse than that unless you're a Red Bull. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that one of the things that really impressed me about Piastri is the last 2 races. A lot of the time you'll see a driver... Let's say the rookie driver and then the established driver. The established driver in a team, the team moves forward in one race, or they're really strong at one race, and the established driver manages to get the most out of the car, and then the rookie driver or the lower driver just can't maximize it quick enough.
Yeah,
Piastri's been there with Norris the second.
Yeah,
that car has been quick. He's been right there.
In
right
that first stint
so,
where he genuinely got ahead. You wouldn't say he was like holding up Norris or anything as well. They were performing well. It was interesting in the order that they pitted. I think there was a little contention where it was like, well you kind of want to get him ahead of me if he was super quick, but should he have gotten preference? I mean,
I think there's I mean, they did have to cover off Hamilton. There is that, and I'm of the opinion maybe they asked Piastri, then we never heard it, that like maybe he didn't want to pit, and maybe he let Norris pit, as like can we pit Norris first to make sure we offset the Hamilton thing, and then Norris just decided to have like a freaking incredible outlap after he came out of the pits and managed to jump Piastri, came in the next lap. I don't think it would have mattered. I think in that second stint Norris was considerably faster than Piastri.
Yeah.
Because Piastri was losing a lot of time to Norris. Like he only came out just behind, and he was 7, 8, 9 seconds behind and falling in that second stint. So it did stabilize a little bit, but I think there's a good chance if Norris was stuck behind Piastri, they may have Norris could have lost his P2
potentially. Yeah.
Yes.
So it did work out as but irrespective, I don't think, as I say, that's to say that Piastri did anything poor. I think so far for his first year, and especially compared to who he replaced, who we haven't actually talked about, because now we can talk about it as well.
This is the Australian F1 podcast. We're talking about
exactly. Yes.
But yeah, Ricciardo outqualified Tsunoda, which already
only by a little, but hey, there you go. Something De Vries only did twice.
Yep. And then actually ran a pretty decent race after being sort of out of position from that knock.
Yes, he did well to not get knocked out at the start there. That was quite tricky to get around. So he was obviously on the back foot, and in a car where really you need to. Some of the beauty of what Albon does is he navigates his way through early, really well. And what we've seen Yuki do similarly as well is that first lap to make up a few places and then have really nice strategy. But if you start near the back and you haven't got, a car like, the Williams, it's somewhere like Spa or Monza, well, then you're going to be struggling a bit. So, from that perspective, I didn't hear anyone say he did bad. He seemed to love it, which was, I guess, good to see as well. But he can only push that car so far. He was fighting with, the Alpha, the Haas. That's where they're at. So if he is fighting there, well, then good on him.
Yeah, and who predicted he would end P13? That's right, your boy.
You did. You did get P13.
Yeah, so... Yeah.
Very nice.
There you go. He's lived exactly up to my expectations. No more, no less. So,
and my boy Hulk instead got the 14. So it's not a point, but hey, he knows where.
I think you picked P12 anyway. So
did I? Yeah. Oh, and that's my Bottas. Bottas was my other pick for prediction. Yeah. So there you go. That counts as well.
Yeah. Well. I think I picked. Nah, we'll get into that. That's the next video. Yeah. I mean, that's. I don't know. I don't really have anything else to talk about unless you wanted to touch on anything else. But I think we've just about covered most of the things I wanted to.
I mean, I didn't really. I don't think there was anything from the FIA side that really came up at all.
We can't play the funny theme song.
You can play it, but there's nothing to really comment in. Like
play the sad
wet
version
and we know
of it.
That it's the reverse version.
The demonic version.
Yes, bass boosted. I don't think there was much to mention.
No, not really.
They're first designed for the aqua guards in
Oh, I haven't
Silverstone was
seen that. Yeah.
It was apparently crap, so but
Oh.
then it's like it's a new thing anyway, so I'm not going to judge them for that because
cares?
that's a
They're
really
trying.
hard task to do. I know.
They're trying.
Good on them for trying. I'm not
Yeah.
going to hurt them for it. I think it's great they're looking into that because everyone's gone, oh, you can't do anything about it. Now they've set a team up for it, so good on them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all right. It won't be long before they do something shit. And we're going to Spa, and Spa is generally home to some contentious FIA decisions.
Yes,
so...
especially this year, Spa's going to have a lot of conversation in the week due to recent events.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting. Yes.
Yep. But that was it. The Hungarian Grand Prix. Let us know what you thought. If you enjoyed it, or if you were like us, sort of wishing it was a little bit more exciting. But regardless, it's a very short turnaround. Go to Spa before we've got that long break. Again, if you have any topics for the mid-season podcast, let us know. But until then, stay tuned for the Belgian Grand Prix preview. We'll see you then. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye.